Hello everyone, this is Here's Trivia, and today we're going to cover what happened at the Web Hollow during the original Journey to the West. Of course, this corresponds to the plot of the fourth chapter of the game Black Myth Wukong, titled Rosy Cheeks, Grey Hair. For those who have the novel and want to follow along, the events covered in this video will be from chapters 72 and 73. Now, our story begins during the onset of spring, as Tang Seng's party of westward travelers were nearing the end of their journey, and finally had a moment to enjoy themselves and take in the scenery, as the surrounding land was blooming beautifully. Then, out of the blue, the sight of a estate nearby, nestled in a small forest, spurred Tang Seng to get off his horse. Puzzled by his master's odd behavior, Wukong asked why the sudden stop when the road was smooth and without danger. Butting into the conversation, Bajie blamed Wukong for being unreasonable, as their master must have been fatigued from the long horseback ride, and with scenery this good, pausing to take in the view is quite understandable. Tang Seng, however, answered that he did not stop for the scenery, but rather with the sight of the estate ahead, he wanted to visit the people living there, to see if they could spare them some food. Laughing at the idea of Tang Seng being the one to go and ask for alms, Wukong offered to go himself, as asking for alms was usually always Wukong's duty. Additionally, it just felt wrong to have the master do the chores when there are 3 disciples available to handle these burdens. Yet Tang Seng insisted, as he claimed that usually they're always out in the wilderness, so Wukong's ability to traverse long distances quickly on his cloud made him the best candidate to go find people to ask for alms. But today, the estate is right up ahead, so I can do it myself. At this point, Bajie also chimed in, as he too felt that Tang Seng should not go ask for alms, for this was clearly a duty for the disciples, and that he was more than happy to do it instead. Despite Wukong and Bajie's insistence, Tang Seng continued to nominate himself, as he pointed out that even the weather is fair, so it would just take him a moment to see if the estate up ahead was willing to provide them alms or not. Sensing Tang Seng's stubbornness on the subject, Sha Seng was quick to play the mediator, as he told his 2 senior disciples to just let their master have his way. So Bajie handed their bowl and Tang Seng's Buddhist robe over, as the 3 disciples would make camp while watching Tang Seng walk towards the estate ahead by himself. Now, as Tang Seng approached the estate, he could spot through the window 4 beautiful ladies who were busy doing needlework. However, because Tang Seng could not see any man of the house inside, he hesitated to walk up to the doors, as he felt isolated contact with 4 ladies would be improper. So Tang Seng waited far outside the main doors for almost 1 hour before Tang Seng finally gave up on hoping that a man would show up inside the estate. Add on the fact that Tang Seng was secretly worried that his 3 disciples would laugh at him if he would return empty-handed, he finally mustered up the courage to knock and head inside the estate to ask for alms. Now, just as Tang Seng crossed over a bridge that sat over a decorative pond in front of the main entrance, he got another view of the inside of the estate from another window. This time, Tang Seng saw 3 new ladies who were just as beautiful as the 4 earlier, just in different ways, as they were entertaining themselves by kicking a ball around in front of a wooden pavilion. This scene was particularly seductive, as the kicking motion sometimes revealed their legs, while their sweat also made their silk dresses a bit see-through. Add on the cheering and grunting sound that would occur with each strike of the ball, Tang Seng once again lost himself, as he would stand there for quite a while before finally yelling out to the ladies inside to ask for alms. Upon hearing Tang Seng's voice, the ladies inside happily dropped their needlework and the ball, as all 7 would come out to welcome Tang Seng inside to receive alms. Delighted by this success, Tang Seng silently thought to himself that Buddhism has indeed entrenched itself in these Western lands, as even young ladies were happy to provide alms to traveling monks. But after walking past the wooden pavilion inside, one of the ladies opened a pair of stone gates leading to a dark room with tables and chairs all made of stone. A little afraid at the sight of this, Tang Sung wanted nothing but to get out of there, but the ladies smiled and laughed as they continued to guide Tang Sung into this dark room. Sensing that they were not going to allow him to leave, Tang Sung had no choice but to enter and take a seat on one of the stone chairs. Soon the chill from the room and the stone chair crept up Tang Sung's back, causing Tang Sung to sneeze and get goosebumps, while the lady started to ask him questions about where he was from, what he was doing here, and if he needed monetary alms in addition to food. Politely responding to these ladies, Tang Sung clarified that he was only seeking food, as he was not here to fundraise for any temple, scripture, or road, but rather he was a monk from the Tang dynasty, who has been ordered by the emperor to head west for the Thunderclap Temple of Buddha to receive the scriptures of Buddhism and bring them back to enlighten the people of the Tang Empire. Hearing this, 4 of the ladies excused themselves to go cook for Tang Sung, while 3 remained behind to chat with him. Yet when the 4 returned with food, the dishes contained blackened and charred deep-fried human meat, fried in human oil, and human brain that is cut up like tofu. Clearly, the sight and smell of these 2 dishes upset Tang Sung, who followed the Buddhist practice of avoiding eating meat ever since he was a baby. Yet the ladies laughed and claimed that these dishes were vegetarian. Tang Sung, of course, did not believe them, as he continued to resist these food by claiming that if he ate these supposedly vegetarian dishes, Buddha would abandon him and his journey would be for nothing. At this point, the ladies started to get a bit angry as they started to accuse Tang Sung of being a picky monk who didn't value the alms that they were providing. And Tang Sung was quick to explain how this was not the case, as he had always treasured all alms provided during his entire journey west. It is just that these dishes are clearly not vegetarian. With the ladies continuing to push Tang Sung to give these dishes a try, Tang Sung requested to just leave. But of course, these ladies would never allow this, as they told Tang Sung that he came into their lair willingly, and that there was no going back, as the 7 of them quickly overpowered Tang Sung. Then using a few ropes, they tied Tang Sung up in a particular pose with both of his feet and one of his arms tied behind his back, while Tang Sung's one remaining arm was tied pointing forward. The ladies would name this pose 仙人指路, or the immortal pointing the way, as they would hang Tang Sung onto the ceiling beam of the room. Through this whole process, Tang Sung wept and hoped his disciples would come save him soon, as he feared he would not last 4 more hours here. Now, after the ladies were done with Tang Sung, they started to undress, much to Tang Sung's surprise. At first, Tang Sung thought these ladies might be trying to take his virginity, or might need to get naked to eat him. But soon he discovered that all 7 ladies merely took off their robe and inner shirt to unveil their belly buttons. And from these belly buttons, a thick web started to shoot out, as not long after, the entire estate would be covered and enclosed by the webs produced from these 7 ladies. And while all of this was going on, the 3 disciples were just hanging out by the side of the road, looking after the horse, tending to the luggage, and just waiting for Tang Sung to return. But because Wukong is always restless and playful, he started to climb some of the trees nearby to pick some fruits, and while on these trees, Wukong looked ahead and spotted this bright white glare in the area where their master had gone to seek alms. Alerting Bajie and Shaseng to this anomaly, Wukong quickly came to the conclusion that their master must have entered a monster's lair. So after discussing their options, the 3 disciples decided to send Wukong to scout ahead, while Bajie and Shaseng remained behind, even though Bajie had originally wanted to go as well. Now, when Wukong approached this white mass of thick intertwining web, he instinctively wanted to smash it with his staff, but after poking the web first with his hand, Wukong found the mass to be soft and sticky. A bit concerned that the soft and flexible web would absorb his smash, Wukong decided against striking the web, as he instead recited a chant to summon the local soil deity. Now, the moment that Wukong started his chant, the soil deity, back in his own shrine, started to spin in place as he initially resisted this summon. But seeing him spinning in place, his wife, the female soil deity of this land, questioned what was wrong with him. The soil deity answered that the Grand Sage was here and was summoning him, but he had heard rumors that the Grand Sage liked to hit people, and given how heavy his staff was, the soil deity was afraid to answer the summon. His wife, however, told him to just go, as given his old age, the Grand Sage will surely have mercy on him. But the soil deity was not convinced, as he continued to resist. Yet his wife could not stand the sight of him just spinning non-stop in place, so after bickering with him for a while longer, the soil deity finally gave up and teleported himself to face Wukong. Shivering at the sight of Wukong, the soil deity quickly bowed down as Wukong lectured him to stop pretending to be busy, and that while he was not going to strike him this time, he will remember that the soil deity now owed him a strike for the tardiness. Continuing to interrogate the soil deity about the local area, Wukong found out that the ridge here is called Pan Si Ling, or the intertwining web ridge, and that there was a cave below named Pan Si Dong, or the intertwining web cave. And most importantly, there are 7 monsters who live in the cave. Wukong followed up by asking if the monsters were male or female, and the soil deity answered that all 7 are female monsters. But when Wukong asked about the power level of these monsters, the soil deity could not answer as he had no idea. What he did know is that to the south of the cave, there was a hot spring called 浊垢泉, or the purifying spring. It was previously a hot spring used by celestial maidens, but after the monster moved in and took over the spring, even the celestial maidens did not dare to fight these monsters. So the soil deity assumes that they must be somewhat strong. Slightly confused by the soil deity's story, Wukong asked why the monster wanted the hot spring, and the soil deity answered that he was not sure, but he knew that these monsters go to the hot spring for bath 3 times a day on a regular schedule. And looking at the time now, the soil deity believed that the monster should be heading there soon. Happy with the intel, Wukong finally released the soil deity to go back to his shrine, while he transformed himself into a fly as he rested on a blade of grass nearby and waited. Not long after, the mass of web that covered the estate retreated away like the falling tide as 7 beautiful ladies walked out of the estate, giggling, chatting, and making their way towards the hot spring in the south. Seeing this, Wukong quickly flew himself onto the hairpin of the lady in the front, as he would quietly spy on the group until he overheard them talk about bringing the monk to the hot spring so that they could steam and boil him in the hot spring before consuming him. Now, this particular hot spring was the result of the crashing of the 9 suns when the legendary folklore hero Yi used his bow and arrow to shoot down 9 of the 10 suns in the sky to help drop the temperature to a level that humans can survive. And when the 9 falling suns crashed into the earth, 9 separate hot springs were created, with this being one of them. And speaking of the hot spring, Wukong would watch all 7 ladies get completely undressed as they would hang their clothes on a clothing rack nearby while they jump into the hot spring for their bath. At this point, Wukong considered transforming back and just killing all 7 monsters while they were naked and defenseless in the hot spring. But Wukong felt doing so would damage his reputation as the Grand Sage, as picking on 7 young ladies just felt wrong to him, especially during such a vulnerable circumstance. So instead, Wukong came up with an alternative plan, as he transformed himself into a hawk, grabbed all the clothes from the rack, and simply flew away, hoping that the ladies would be too ashamed to run back to their estate naked, or at the very least, slow them down enough so that he can regroup with Bajie and Shaseng and rescue their master. Yet when Wukong landed back in front of Bajie and Shaseng with a bunch of lady dresses, Bajie initially thought that these were the alms that their master had gotten from the estate ahead, and that Wukong had just carried them back. But when Wukong explained that these are the dresses of 7 monsters that resided ahead, Bajie then questioned how Wukong was able to undress them so cleanly. Explaining what he had seen and heard at the hot spring and the current predicament that their master was in, Wukong instructed them to quickly gather their stuff and head to save their master before leaving this ridge for good. Knowing that there are 7 naked and beautiful female monsters in a hot spring right now, Bajie quickly rejected Wukong's plan, as he suggested that instead of running away and having these monsters chase after them, he wanted to go kill these monsters first before rescuing their master. Now, Wukong did not vote against Bajie's plan, but as he had no interest in killing these female monsters before, Wukong basically told Bajie to take care of it himself if he thought killing them was the better option. Excited by this proposition, Bajie grabbed his rake and skipped his way to the hot spring, where he found these 7 ladies cursing at the hawk that had stolen all their clothes. Laughing at this sight, Bajie started to undress himself as he told the ladies inside the hot spring that he wanted to share a bath with them. Furious at this rude and ugly monk, the 7 ladies scolded him for being crass, as even 7-year-olds know it's improper for girls and boys to share a bed, much less share a bath. Paying no attention to the words of the 7 ladies, Bajie threw his rake aside, tossed his clothes onto the ground, and dived right into the hot spring. Now, as these 7 ladies were monsters in disguise, they were not scared as they grouped together in an attempt to beat up Bajie. But given that Bajie was originally the Celestial Admiral in charge of all 80,000 Celestial Marines, he was extremely skilled underwater, as he would even transform himself into a slimy catfish that easily avoided the fists of all 7 angry ladies. As the water was about chest high, Bajie swam around all 7 ladies' feet, in between all 7 ladies' legs, and finally in front of all 7 ladies' chests, before he finally had his fill of fun. Leaping out of the water and transforming back to his original pig form, Bajie grabbed his rake as he prepared to strike. Now, shocked by his true appearance, the 7 ladies asked Bajie about his true identity, as he had transformed from an ugly-looking human monk into a catfish and now into a pig monster. Bajie responded that he was the disciple of the monk that they had captured earlier, and that he was here to kill them for plotting to boil and eat his master. Now afraid for their lives, the 7 ladies pleaded for mercy as they promised to release Tang Seng, but Bajie was having none of it, as he had every intention of killing these monsters on the spot. With no option but to jump out of the hot spring, the 7 ladies covered their private parts the best they could as they leaped out of the hot spring and took shelter behind the wooden pavilion, where they started to release their massive web from their belly button once again. Soon the webs covered everything, as Bajie found it almost impossible to move, as he would trip over the sticky web non-stop. While Bajie was trapped in the web, the 7 ladies quickly fled back to their cave before recalling their webs once again. Delighted by their escape, the 7 ladies giggled their way past the hanging Tang Seng while they were still naked, as they would eventually find some old clothes to put on before summoning their 7 adopted sons. Now, it turns out that each of the 7 monsters adopted one type of bug monster as an adopted son. Altogether, they consisted of a bee monster, a cricket monster, a wasp monster, a fly monster, a mosquito monster, a maggot monster, and a dragonfly monster. Initially, they had all been bugs that fell into the spider's web, but after pleading for their lives, they became adopted sons and effectively servants to the 7 spider ladies, as they tributed flowers, nectars, and all sorts of treasures to please their mothers. Explaining to these bugs that they had provoked some angry monks from the east, the spider ladies told their sons that they were planning to take refuge with their senior disciple, so they were going to leave the defense of the cave to them. Back outside the cave, Bajie finally regained his footing after the webs were recalled, as he would end up all bruised from the tumbles and falls. Heading back to regroup with Wukong, Bajie explained what had happened as the three disciples decided to head to the cave together, this time to rescue their master. Approaching the main gate of the estate, Wukong spotted 7 tiny bug monsters that stood guard on the bridge leading up to the doors. And these were the 7 adopted sons, as despite their tiny size, they soon started to multiply, as 1 became 10, 10 became 100, 100 became 1,000, before becoming a hive of countless bugs that covered the sky. Initially, Bajie tried to fight off the swarm, but the bug bites eventually irritated even his thick hide, so Wukong turned to transformations as he grabbed a handful of his own fur, chewed them into smaller pieces before blowing them into the air, as these fragments of hair transform into 7 different types of birds. And soon in this battle of birds versus bugs, the birds would win out, as the ground would become covered in the dead bodies of the bugs. The 3 disciples then rushed into the cave, where they found their master still hanging off the ceiling. Freeing their master, the disciples then searched the rest of the cave but found no signs of the monsters. Tang Seng lamented on his fate and swore to never go seeking alms by himself ever again, as the party gathered up their belongings, lit the cave on fire, and continued their journey to the west. Within a half day of travel, the party soon found themselves in front of a grand temple named the Temple of the Yellow Flower. As the structure resembled a Taoist temple, Bajie suggested that they could seek shelter here and maybe ask for a meal. Shasen concurred, as Tang Seng noted a couplet written on the side of the main gate that suggested that this was a Taoist temple that specialized in alchemy and the crafting of medicinal pills. Noting this, Wukong smiled and openly mocked the temple as nothing more than a dirty cauldron, for Wukong has never been fond of the Taoist alchemy, given his past dealings with the celestial cauldron that had trapped him for 49 days. Worried that the monks inside would hear Wukong's degrading remarks, Tang Seng quickly ordered Wukong to watch his tongue as they entered the temple, only to find a well-dressed Taoist monk inside, busying himself in front of a cauldron, working on a new batch of pills. Absorbed in his work, the Taoist was caught a bit off guard when Tang Seng raised his voice to offer his greetings. But once he got a good look at Tang Seng and the rest of his party, he put his pills aside, straightened up his clothes, and welcomed them into the great hall of the temple. 2 younger disciples were quickly summoned to offer tea to these guests, but when these 2 young disciples went to the back to look for teapot and teacups, the 7 spider ladies stopped them to ask if they were guests in the temple. As it turned out, the head Taoist monk of this temple was the senior disciple of these 7 spider monsters, and thus when they had previously abandoned their cave, they came here in the Temple of the Yellow Flower to seek refuge. Hearing that 4 Buddhist monks had just entered the temple, the 7 ladies asked the 2 younger disciples to bring back their master, as they had something very important to tell him. So after bringing back the tea, one of the disciples whispered into the ear of their Taoist master, as the Taoist would excuse himself briefly from the main hall, leaving Tang Seng's party to enjoy their tea. In the back of the temple, when the Taoist walked into the room where his 7 junior disciples were in, the 7 spider ladies all bowed down together as they cried out to their senior disciple for justice and revenge. Confused by all this, the Taoist quickly explained that he did not come to see them earlier today because the latest batch of pills required him to stay away from females, as their yin energy would corrupt the batch during the alchemy process. But now with the pills complete and guests in the temple, he was available to hear their plea. The 7 spider ladies quickly explained what had happened earlier in the day from their initial capture of Tang Seng, their desire to eat him based on the legend that consuming the meat of the 10th reincarnation of the golden cicada would grant immortality, and how this plan was foiled when the pig-faced monk had violated them in the hot spring before bringing the other two disciples to wreck their cave and kill their adopted sons. Furious at how his junior disciples had been violated, and furthermore tempted by the idea of consuming Tang Seng's flesh himself, the Taoists quickly vowed to retaliate. But when the 7 spider monsters offered to fight together, the Taoists refused, as instead of fighting, he had a better idea, as he wanted to poison them instead. Bringing the 7 ladies back to his private chamber, the Taoist grabbed a ladder and reached up to the ceiling beam to grab out a small leather lockbox. Opening the bronze lock, the Taoist removed a package of poison made from bird poops from over 100 species of birds within these mountains. Explaining to the 7 ladies, the Taoist claimed that just 1 teaspoon of this poison can kill any mortal. So just in case these monks are highly cultivated, he planned on giving each of them 3 teaspoons of this poison. Now, to disguise the poison, the Taoist took out 12 red dates as he would stuff 1 teaspoon of poison into each of the date. Then placing 3 red dates into a teacup, the Taoist prepared 4 poison cups of tea before making himself a normal cup of tea with 2 black dates. Finally, he put on a new set of clothing, bid his 7 junior disciples farewell before walking back to rejoin Tang Seng's party in the Great Hall. Returning back to Tang Seng's side, the Taoist explained that he had to excuse himself as he needed to instruct the disciples to prepare some vegetarian dishes for dinner, as he knew the Buddhist monks were vegetarians. Thanking the Taoist for his generosity, Tang Seng shared that they were traveling monks from the Tang Empire in the Far East, and that they were only passing by on their way west to the Spirit Mountain, where they will hopefully receive the true scriptures of Buddhism from Buddha himself. Now, having confirmed that this was indeed the Tang Seng, whose flesh was rumored to provide immortality, the Taoist quickly rose up in deference as he ordered his younger disciples to bring out the better tea for his esteemed guests. And when the young disciple went to the back to look for better tea, the 7 spider ladies handed them the tray with the poison date teas. Once they returned with this new tray of tea, the disciple first presented the first cup of the poison tea to Tang Seng, as they knew he was the master, and thus the most esteemed guest. Then the second cup of poison tea went to Ba Jie, as based on sheer size, the young Taoist disciple felt Ba Jie must have been the most senior disciple. Based on the same logic, Sha Seng got the third cup of tea, before the smallest size Wukong received the final cup. However, because of this ordering, Wukong, who was extremely observant, already noticed that while all their cups had 3 red dates, the final cup reserved for the Taoists had 2 black dates. So before picking up his cup offered by the young Taoist disciple, Wukong insisted on switching for the cup with the 2 black dates. Troubled by this development, the Taoists quickly explained that because of how poor their temple was, they were only able to found 12 fresh dates, and naturally the fresh dates are reserved for the esteemed guests. So his cup is different because the 2 black dates are old dates and not fit for the guests. Now, even more suspicious, Wukong claimed that traveling monks have to endure many hardships, so old dates are not a problem at all, and that he still wished to swap. But at this point, Tang Seng butted in to ask Wukong to not be rude to their host, and Wukong had no choice but to take the cup with the 3 red dates. Despite this, Wukong did not drink right away, as he kept his right hand on the lid of the teacup and simply observed for a bit. Unlike Wukong, Ba Jie, who got his cup much earlier, couldn't hold back his lust for food, as he not only drank the tea already, but also ate all 3 dates too. Thus, the poison took its effect on Ba Jie first, as Ba Jie felt a great pain in his stomach. By this point, Sha Seng and Tang Seng, who had both drank a little bit of the tea, were also feeling the effect of the poison, as Sha Seng started to cry due to the pain, while Tang Seng's mouth started to froth, as his mortal body simply couldn't handle the poison. Now, knowing that their tea had been poisoned, Wukong threw his teacup right at the Taoists. The Taoists would block and scold back at Wukong, as he explained that he was only punishing them for their earlier deed inside the intertwining cave and the purifying spring. Making the connection that the Taoists must be related to the 7 spider monsters, Wukong pulled out his staff and slammed it right at the Taoist's face. Rolling away to dodge the strike, the Taoist pulled out his sword to counter, and hearing the commotions, the 7 spider monsters also ran out as they started to spread their webs once again from their belly button. As the web started to cover the sky, Wukong became concerned that he would be trapped by the sticky web, so he quickly summoned his Nimbus Cloud and leaped out of the enclosing cocoon. Looking back down, Wukong saw how quickly the web completely enclosed the entire temple, as he now understood how the webs had made Bajie fall and tumble so much earlier at the hot spring. As he knew nothing about the Taoist and his abilities, Wukong once again summoned the soil deity, who came immediately this time. Still shivering, the soil deity asked the Grand Sage what was required of him, as Wukong asked him about the Temple of the Yellow Flower and the Taoist inside. The soil deity explained that this particular monster had been here for around a decade, and that 3 years ago, he had seen their true form of being spiders. So this mass of webs are spider webs. Now confident that the webs are just spider webs, Wukong pulled out 70 hairs from his tail, as he would transform and make 70 copies of himself. Then pulling another 70 hairs, he transformed 70 two-headed spears for the 70 clones, as he commanded his clones to go and untangle the webs below. Poking, stirring, and cutting up the massive webs, with the two-headed spears, the clones made quick work of the web, and even dragged out the 7 spider ladies who were still attached to the web from their belly button. With these 7 hostage in hand, Wukong now threatened the Taoists to provide his companions the antidote, or else he would kill all 7 of his sisters, as at this point, based on the intel from the soil deity, Wukong believed that the Taoist was also a spider monster too. Yet the Taoist was deaf to Wukong's demand and also deaf to the pleas from the 7 spider monsters, as he told his 7 junior disciples that eating the flesh of Tang Seng and gaining immortality was worth far more than their worthless lives. Seeing that the 7 hostages were useless, Wukong slammed his staff down 7 times, as all 7 spider ladies would be killed on the spot. Then Wukong recalled his 70 clones and charged in at the Taoists alone. Shaken a bit from the bloody sight of his 7 now deceased junior disciples, the Taoist steadied his sword and fought back, as the 2 sides would go on for 60 exchanges before the Taoist started to feel his grasp slipping from his blade, as Wukong's strikes were becoming too heavy for him to block. So switching strategies, the Taoist took off his shirt completely, as he unveiled over 1,000 eyes that grew on his body, running up and down both sides of his ribs. Not only did he have 1,000 eyes, these eyes emitted a glowing golden light that was both disorienting and damaging. Bathed in this golden light, Wukong soon lost his sense of direction, as he would stumble and hit his head on the ground. Normally, Wukong's physical body would be immune to damage, but after getting basked in this golden light, Wukong felt his stone-like skin soften as a bump quickly formed on his head where he had hit the ground. Trapped in this light, Wukong had no choice but to transform himself into a Pagolian, as he would start to just dig into the ground. Traversing through the ridge, Wukong must have dug for over 10 kilometers until he finally resurfaced. Looking back, Wukong discovered that the golden light only had a range of about 5 kilometers, so knowing that he was now safe, Wukong transformed back to his true form and found himself weak, tired, and sore all over. Lamenting at his master's fate, Wukong couldn't hold back the tears as he worried about his master dying from the poison. Yet just as Wukong was grieving, another crying noise emerged from behind him as Wukong turned around and found a middle-aged woman dressed in mourning white and holding paper money for the dead. Approaching the woman, Wukong asked why she was mourning, and the woman replied that her husband was a merchant who was poisoned and killed by the Taoists inside the Temple of the Yellow Flowers after the two sides had a dispute over the price for a batch of bamboo. Seeing that Wukong also had tears on his face, the woman became angry as she thought he was mocking her by imitating her. Wukong quickly explained what had happened to his master and fellow disciples, and that while she had paper money to mourn the death of her husband, he had nothing to mourn for the imminent death of his master. Hearing this, the woman walked towards Wukong and told him that the Taoist was not a spider monster, as he goes by the name of the 100-Eyed Demon Lord. Furthermore, she knows of a deity who can help overcome his golden light, as Wukong quickly pleaded for her to share this vital information. Yet the woman refused, as she said that while this deity can defeat the monster, she cannot save your master, as this deity lived far away, and that the poison will surely claim your master's life within 3 days. Telling the woman to not worry, as he can leap great distances in an instant, Wukong insisted on finding out which deity can tame this monster, so the woman instructed Wukong to go 500 kilometers directly south of them, where he can find a mountain called the Purple Cloud Mountain. Atop of this mountain, there was a cave called the Thousand Flower Cave, and within this cave lives a bodhisattva or Pusa named Pilan Po, who is able to tame this monster. As she finished this sentence, she disappeared into thin air. Now knowing that she must have been a deity too, Wukong quickly yelled out into the heavens asking for her name so that he can give his thanks. And from the heavens, Wukong heard a reply. As he looked up, he quickly identified the deity as Li Shan Lao Mu, or the immortal lady from Mount Li. Asking why she was helping him, the immortal simply told him that she was just passing by after attending a meeting with other immortals. More importantly, she warned Wukong to not mention her name to Pilan Po, as in her own words, Pilan Po is a bit odd. So Wukong gave his thanks and immediately jumped onto his cloud and sped his way to the Purple Cloud Mountain, where he found a serene but quiet mountain that felt completely uninhabited. Just when he thought that the Pusa must not be home, Wukong spots a lone, elderly-looking female meditating on her bed within the Thousand Flower Cave. Calling out to Pilanpo Pusa, Wukong was shocked that the Pusa knew his name as well, before he even introduced himself. Pilanpo quickly explained that back when Wukong was rebelling against the celestial court, his image and likeness were posted for all the deities to see as a fugitive, which is why she recognized him. Laughing at this, Wukong lamented that bad news sure travels fast, as he asked the Pusa if she had heard that he too had now joined Buddhism. Unaware of this, Pilanpo congratulated him and asked when did he convert, as she had not left this cave for over 300 years. Explaining the whole journey to the west and how he had become a disciple of Tang Seng, Wukong eventually brought up the reason for his visit, as the 100-Eyed Demon Lord had poisoned the rest of his party, and he struggled to defeat him due to the golden light that emitted from his many eyes. Questioning how Wukong knew she could counter his golden light, Pilanpo wondered who might know her whereabouts, as her quiet meditation had been going on for hundreds of years. Remembering what Li Shan Laomu had instructed him, Wukong brushed off Pilanpo's question and simply claimed that he was all-knowing. And believing Wukong, Pilanpo agreed to go and help him, but when asked what weapon she will use, she simply brought out a sewing needle. Unconvinced that a simple sewing needle could defeat the 100-Eyed Demon Lord, Wukong blurted out that Li Shan Laomu had tricked him, as if the sewing needle was the secret weapon, he could have easily transformed a whole basket full of them. Responding to Wukong's doubt, Pilanpo told him that her needle is not made of any earthly material, but rather a magical item formed within the eyes of her son. Asking who her son was, Pilanpo informed Wukong that the Maozhi constellation deity, or the rooster constellation deity of the celestial constellation, was in fact her son. Shocked by this revelation, Wukong became convinced that this was indeed no ordinary needle, as the two of them would race back to the Temple of the Yellow Flower together. Spotting the golden light from far away, Wukong told Pilanpo that the light was where the monster was at, so Pilanpo simply flicked her needle into the air, and within a short time, the light below disappeared. Delighted, Wukong asked if they needed to go down to retrieve the needle, only for Pilanpo to open the palm of her hand, revealing the needle inside, as it had magically found its way back to its master after finishing its job. Leaping down to the temple, Wukong found the Taoist standing motionless in the middle of the courtyard, with all his eyes shut tight. Now, just when Wukong wanted to give one swing of his staff to end the monster's life, Pilanpo stopped him, as she told him to go find his master and fellow disciples first. Finding them still suffering from the effects of the poison in the Great Hall, Wukong asked Pilanpo what they could do about the poison, as she reached into her pocket and brought out a folded pouch containing 3 red pills. Pilanpo then instructed Wukong to feed the pills to Tang Seng, Ba Jie, and Sha Seng. As soon after Wukong forced the pills down their throats, all 3 started to vomit and throw up violently, until they finally cleansed their body of the poison. With everyone saved, Tang Seng quickly gave his thank to Pilanpo Pusa, as Ba Jie asked for the whereabouts of the Taoist. After Wukong told Ba Jie how the Taoist was pretending to be blind in the courtyard, Ba Jie grabbed his rake, as he too wanted to kill the monster for the suffering that he had been through due to the poison. Once again, just before Ba Jie would take his swing, Pilanpo stopped him, as she wanted to take him in alive as a cave guardian for her, as she had no followers in the Purple Cloud Mountain. Naturally, because she had just saved them, Wukong and Ba Jie agreed to spare him, but asked if she could reveal his true form for them to see. Pilanpo simply pointed her fingers at the Taoist as he immediately transformed into a giant centipede. Looking at the centipede, Ba Jie asked how they were able to tame such a horrendous monster, and Wukong explained the origins of the magic needle. Understanding that the mother of the rooster must be a hen, Ba Jie quickly drew the connection that the chicken, of course, naturally counters the centipede, so they finally bid Pilanpo Pusa farewell. Tang Seng and the disciples then gathered up their belongings, ate a quick meal from the food found inside the temple, before lighting the whole place ablaze as they would continue on their journey westward. And with that, our story on what happened at the Web Hollow also comes to an end. Hopefully you all have enjoyed this retelling enough to hit the like button and drop a comment below to help support the channel. And also make sure you're subscribed for more content on Journey to the West and Black Myth Wukong. And I'll see you all next time. Bye!